Hello YouTube! I hope you guys are doing well. I know it's been already 3 months since I've posted my last video. I just couldn't get around recording anything new, but I'm really glad to finally get back to you today with a new process video. So first I want to let you know that this video is actually an edited Twitch replay of mine. Because maybe some of you don't really know, but I have been actively streaming on Twitch for the past 3 months or something. I thought it would be really interesting to turn this video into YouTube videos and break down my process and explain how I did things. And okay, so as you can hear, I didn't prepare any voiceover script, so this is gonna sound maybe a bit more spontaneous and chaotic than usual, but I just want to take things a bit more easily here on YouTube because video making is always quite overwhelming for me, so I want to make things a bit easier and a bit more natural for me. So this is why I have no script today, and I will just try to have like a casual, laid back video voiceover for you. And yeah, so this page was painted probably about 2 months ago already, but I was really happy with how the paintings on this page turned out, so I thought this would be quite interesting to take you through the process and explain how I did things. And I want to apologize as well about the video quality because like I said, this was made from a Twitch stream, so the video might not look as polished as usual. And a bit maybe not as nice as my previous video, but again, I think it doesn't make the content less interesting anyway. I still think that there is a lot to say about these paintings and that you might enjoy seeing the process even though it's a bit less polished than usual. So yeah, anyway, let me talk a bit about these paintings. So I decided a few months ago to get back to my Strathmore mixed media sketchbook. I started this sketchbook about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know, I carried it around for quite a long time. And this was my typical go-to sketchbook when I was in the mood to make pretty drawings, basically. So this is the reason why I haven't been using quite a lot, because I couldn't get around and just do quick sketches in it, so I would have to be in the right mood to get my pretty paints and start doing, pretty polished drawings. And this is the main reason why it took me so long to finish it, basically. Okay, so for the 4 paintings in this page were made, I was using my own photo references. Again, this is something I think I talked about in a previous video, but I really like working from my own pictures because, well, obviously you don't have to worry about any copyright infringement when it's your own materials. And also I feel like my art ends up being way more meaningful to me whenever I'm working for my own pictures because they bring back some really good memories and everything is suddenly so much more personal. So this is something I like to do most of the time. Okay, so, and this is the first painting starting already. So these are some nettles. I had to figure how to call these plants in English because in French they're called Orties. And I don't know, I just tend to take a lot of pictures of nettles. I think they're really beautiful plants, despite the fact they are stinging. I had to Google the word, I was missing my words. I really love the way they catch the light and how the leaves are shaped. I find them very charming, so I tend to take a lot of pictures of them. And for this typical painting, I already had a very precise color scheme in mind, so I wanted the painting to be a mix of bright greens, teal and bright greens, and then a mix of burgundy and purple colors. And as you can see, the background of the picture is like a very deep and dark color. It almost looks black, but it's actually something a bit more like a very dark purple. So I decided, to bring a bit more of saturation in it and turn it into a very deep purple instead of a black or brown to make everything a bit more saturated. And I'm starting the painting, like most of my paintings lately, by only wetting the paper to prepare a nice smooth wash of color that I will be able to work on. So I'm just using, clean water and then brushing the paper with a flat brush, which is fairly small this time. Now I'm using a bigger one, which is a bit easier. Anyway, once the paper is damp, I will go back with my colors and then brush it with a bit of pigment. So in this case, starting from the purple, working my way down. Yeah, the thing is, I'm using watercolor for the background here, and then I will be working my way, building the layers with Acrylic Gouache this time. But yeah, I like to start with a very light, soft, and smooth watercolor gradient. This is the way I like to start my paintings most of the time. So I started with purple on top, and then I'm building the colors at the bottom using a mix of teal and green, and making the colors match in the middle of the painting. And yeah, once the paint is fully applied, I like to make things faster by using a hairdryer most of the time. I mean, I just don't really like waiting for the paint to dry on its own, so I'm using a hairdryer very often to make things a bit faster. Don't be afraid to do it. I think it's a good helper and can help you making your watercolor paintings a bit more pleasing, I guess. And once the painting was dry, then I reminded that I actually had no sketch to hold my paint to, so I started sketching on top of my watercolor layer, and it is actually not really a problem. It's working fairly well. So I started sketching some leaves here and there, and then blocking out the big shapes, which in this case were just, the black background at the top of the image, and then the rest of the image being only leaves. So it's not like the composition was really challenging in this case. So I just laid down a very, straight horizontal line to break down the picture into different parts, and then started drawing oval shapes for the leaves around the page. And I want to stress that I'm not gonna be actively copying the image. Usually I just like, take it as more as an inspiration for my drawing. So I'm using the idea I see in the picture, but I'm not trying to copy every single leaf that's in front of me, because that wouldn't make the process really interesting for me. I just, prefer to make something that is a bit more personal. Yeah. So I'm drawing a few leaves here and there. They're basically very simple to draw. They're just like almond shapes. And I'm making some here and there, trying to keep in mind that they are like joined in the middle of the plant. So they're like starting from the same center point, basically. And then working my way up. And as my sketching line go up and go into the distance, I will make the same almond shapes, but a bit smaller and a bit thinner, because there is a bit of perspective going on. So the leaves that are facing us at the bottom of the picture are really laid flat, so they are a bit wider. And then as we go into the distance, the leaves are slowly turning away from us, which make them a bit thinner, if that makes any sense. And once I was done drafting my first sketch, I went over the sketch with a different color, in this case a purple color pencil, to make, I guess, a cleaner version of the first sketch. This is something I like to usually do. I like to do a very raw and loose sketch in graphite and then refine it with a color pencil. That way I will be able to erase only the graphite lines, because they tend to pick up and erase way more easily when I'm going over with an eraser, in this case a kneaded eraser. And only the cleaner color pencil lines will stay because the eraser is not able to erase them as much. And I started painting on top of this. So it's been a while since I painted this, so I had to remind what was my process while making this voiceover. But it seems like in this case, I started drawing the negative shapes in between the leaves with a dark saturated purple. And to keep the luminosity of the paper and the white of the paper within the leaf shapes, so they still get the most luminosity. How to explain? Yeah, it's hard to make a color as light as the white of the paper, even if you're using opaque paint. Usually if you use like opaque white, your painted elements won't look as bright as something that has the white of the paper. So this is the main reason why I decided to keep a lot of the paper color within the leaf shapes, because they're just very luminous, very bright, and I really wanted to keep this quality of the leaves in my painting. So I'm just filling the shapes within them and just using the same process. The closer the leaves and the negative shapes are towards the camera, the bigger the shapes will be, and the more I will go in the distance, the smaller I will draw those negative shapes. So they will get, a bit more speckled in the top of the picture. So I filled the last portion of the image at the top using the same purple. So basically, painting over the darkest darks of my image. And once I was done with it, of course, I used a hairdryer and started mixing a darker green to add a bit of color variation within the darkest dark of my image. And by the way, repeating myself, but in this case, I'm using Acrylic Gouache, which is an in-between mix of acrylic paint and gouache. I've been loving it. I've been using quite a lot for the past month. I think it's an amazing paint to work with. It's very saturated, has a lot of amazing quality. So yeah, this is the paint I'm using right now. And I will be painting some leaves indication within those negative space I outlined, making a few, half almond shapes within the shadow areas, just like this. And I think, I mixed a very dark green, but I still think I used a bit of purple in it to make the whole thing a bit more harmonious, because purple and greens, they're not complementary colors, but they are still quite different one from each other. So I'm always trying to, mix a bit of one into another to make the whole thing a bit more harmonious. I guess I just keep repeating myself, I'm sorry. So yeah, this is what I'm doing right now. Again, making the shape smaller as we get to the distance, just using the same principles. And then, it seems like I mixed a teal turquoise color, and this time this is very translucent. I think this is mostly watercolor, or maybe a very diluted amount of acrylic gouache. So this one layer here has a lot of transparency to it. That way, like I said, it's going to keep the luminosity of the paper and make those leaves really stand out against these dark opaque layers I laid down just before. And I'm just filling a few leaves here and there. And since the previous layer, I'm actually building the leaves from the ground to the upper part of the plant. So the purple areas were mostly the ground. Then I started building another layer of leaves with dark green. And then I'm working my way up and making a layer that is a bit lighter than the previous one, with this blue turquoise green. and then I will probably make another layer on top of that with a brighter green. And at this stage I felt like the background at the top wasn't really dark enough, so I started mixing a darker purple. I think I used like a purple color mixed with a bit of blue to make it darker. By the way, I never use black. This is just my personal preference. When I want to mix darker color, I just use either dark blue or dark purple, dark red, no blacks. And yeah, I'm just covering these purple layers in the background to have something a bit deeper and darker than what it was. Let me see. Yeah, then it seems like I started picking up some opaque turquoise green, cold green color, and painted over some of the leaves that I painted before, the teal ones. Again, it's been a while since I painted this, so I'm not sure why I changed my mind at this stage and decided to use opaque paint instead of the previous turquoise watercolor wash. I guess I was just feeling like it. Sometimes I don't need a particular reason, but I probably felt like I needed more opacity in this case to refine the leaf shapes, I guess. And it seems like I use this occasion to start drawing some dent details around the leaves. So I started adding those spikes around the leaves that makes the nettles leaves so typical. I think that it's a really cute addition, and this is really what makes these leaves so special and so unique. So once I had, since I wanted to add these details, now I'm reminding that I wanted to paint those teeth around the leaves, and the only way I could make them, since it was dark opaque paint in the background, was using a lighter opaque paint. Because if I were using, transparent watercolor on top of the dark purple I had in the background, it wouldn't have covered properly the purple and carve those leaf shapes. And I keep switching from one color to another, so I get back to my dark green, and then sometimes I will go back to the teal turquoise color. I'm sorry if you can hear the background noise, by the way. The weather is pretty warm right now, and I had to, open the window to get some fresh air, and it is pretty noisy outside. I'm sorry about it. And then it turns out I finally started adding some, this is probably one of my favorite acrylic gouache so far, a leaf green color, which is this very beautiful, vibrant, very bright and vibrant light green. I don't know, it's such a beautiful color. It has so much energy to it, and I think it contrasts really well with the dark purple and the darker, colder backgrounds. It really makes this next layer of leaves so shiny and so luminous. I just love this color. What else can I say? So yeah, I started painting the next layer of leaves here and there, adding some leaf details, and then also working and making some inner shapes within the leaves. So instead of filling the whole leaves with a color, I'm drawing small shapes around the veins of the leaves to give some clue about the form of the leaves and make the whole things a bit more interesting. And at this stage, I went back to my all-time favorite pens, which are the Pentel brush sign pens. And if you're already familiar with my work, and if you have been following me for quite a while, you might already be aware that I love these pens oh so much. I use them all the time. I use them for writing and for drawing. They are amazing. They come in so many colors. They just make me so happy to use. And I think they really add a very unique, interesting touch to my paintings. So this is typically what I would go for. I make a very, how to say, a quite loose painting. As you can see, the painting behind it is, yeah, still a bit messy, a bit chaotic. It's pretty hard to see the shapes. But then I will go back and add some darker pen details, and then suddenly everything will come together because I will be able to refine the details and shape with them and make everything stand out and look way more polished instantly. And they do work really well with acrylic gouache because the acrylic gouache is permanent, so it doesn't lift off with the pen details. And it makes this very nice combination. I don't know, it's just, I think it works amazing. So I went over with several green colors because these pens come in so many amazing colors. So I've been using a darker, colder green and also a lime green, to refine some other shapes. Always using a mix of those to have a bit of color variation within my lines. I will be drawing some leaf details and veins with one green and then switching over to another green. And basically, yeah, in this case, I did mostly the leaves outline with the dark green and then started refining the inner details with a lighter green, so it looks a bit more subtle, I guess. And yeah, this is probably my favorite stage of the painting. I think it is very satisfying because we just transition smoothly from a very chaotic stage to something that looks very polished and way more detailed. I don't know. I'm repeating myself once again, I'm sorry. So I'm just going over very slowly, refining every single leaf shape, at least in the foreground, because we want, as usual, I always try to have more details and more refined shape in the foreground, or at least in the focus point of the image, which in this case is the plants in the foreground. And the more I will go up, the more abstract and loose my shapes will be. So you will see me slowly drawing less and less leaf details as I will work my way up to the image. And I'm also using a dark purple pen in this case to refine the areas that are around the purple paint. Because usually I like to use, the pens I'm using are usually a darker color than what I'm outlining. So if I'm working with a lot of green elements, I would use green pens. But then, well, in this case I'm working with purple, so I'm refining everything in purple, so it's matching the paint color, basically. Okay, and at this stage I felt like I wanted the background to be a bit more interesting, so I started mixing a very lilac color. I don't know if I can say, can something be very lilac? I'm not sure, but a lighter purple color, basically, to add a bit of color variations and very subtle details in the background. And just doing a few brush strokes here and there. Something very simple, once again. I don't want the background to empower what's happening in the foreground, which, once again, the star of the show in this case were the leaves in the foreground. So the background needs just to be here to carry the whole thing, but to not compete with the foreground elements. And then, yeah, I mixed an even lighter color to add a bit of, how to say, we can see in the picture there is some light. I think this is the sky showing behind the leaves in the background, so I want to take advantage of this, so I mixed the color that is, yeah, a bit of blue and purple together, and add those speckles in the background to make things a bit more magical, I guess. But I also reused this same color within the rest of the image, so it doesn't look, once again, so it's still harmonious and doesn't only happen at one part of the image. Again, this is a principle I really like to use. Whenever I'm using a color at some point, I like to reuse it somewhere in the image so it doesn't stand out so much. And I'm slowly adding a bit more lighter leaf details in the background. Again, we can see in the background of the picture there are a few nettles that are standing against the very black background, so I use a smaller brush to suggest them, using this bright green that I like so much, of course. And really, really refine the whole silhouette of this nettles patch against the black background. And then, yeah, it's already time for the juicy highlights, of course. Again, I really love this stage because it feels like I'm turning on the lights of the image. So I mixed a very bright yellow with some white, and I'm just adding some highlight details on the leaves on the foreground to make them a bit shiny and, slightly more magical, I guess. It just overall so satisfying once again. And yeah, I don't want to overwork it, so I'm always trying to be mindful when it comes to this stage, because highlights are just like sugar, so they look amazing, but then at some point, if you make too many of them, it's a bit too much for the eye, so I'm trying to be light-handed about them. Even though they look amazing, we don't want the whole thing to become covered with sugar and being too confusing to look at. So I'm adding a few touches here and there. Just adding a few dots, very subtle, small dots on the darker leaves underneath to add a bit of interest to them. It could be morning dew, it could be some insects, I don't know. Usually leaves have so many tiny details in them, so this is one reason why I like to look at nature very closely, because it's so much, it's really full of light. There are so many things to be noticed and to be taken advantage of when painting. Refining a few more shapes with my pen, dark purple pen. I felt like the background was a bit too, too messy, so I started carving a few shapes, negative shapes here and there, to tighten everything a bit more. And yeah, I wanted to peel the tape off. Usually at some stage I like to peel the tape off even though the painting is not fully done, because I find it at some point to be way too distracting to look at my painting, so I like to peel it off a bit before adding the final touches. I think it helps me seeing a bit more clearly. But then I had to peel the whole page off, which wasn't planned, but I don't know, it was losing its stickiness, so I had to re-stick some new tape at the beginning. And you can see there was some paint accident, like the tape was probably losing its stickiness, so there was some paint going underneath, so I'm just going over with white opaque gouache to sharpen the edges and make things a bit cleaner. And yeah, one more time. Now I'm seeing clearer. I'm going over with a few more pen details because I have a different perception now the tape is gone. So just taking some time to refine a few more shapes here and there. And I also like to go back with a darker pen at the very end, in this case the dark purple, to really add a lot of contrast in the shadows area. So I'm adding a lot of cast shadows with the dark pen, which is gonna once again add a lot of variation within the darkest dark of my image. So you can see it create a slight contrast against the purple paint, which is slightly lighter. And yeah, it just makes the lighter areas stand out way more. Okay, and I think that's it for this first painting. So I had initially the plan to make a single video with the 4 paintings on the page, but it turns out my first voiceover is already 30 minutes long, so I guess I'm probably gonna have to cut the video and, you know, release the 3 other paintings as separate videos, so it's still manageable for you to watch. But anyway, I really hope you enjoyed seeing the process of this painting. And if you're interested, this particular painting and the 3 others are available as prints on my Etsy shop, which will be linked down below in the description. And if you have any question about this painting, feel free to leave me a comment under this video. And I'm wishing you a very lovely day. Thank you so much for watching and see you pretty soon, I hope. Bye!